Hey everyone, it's ZLR here, and today I'm going to be doing my recap for week 4 of the NFL season. And the first game we had was the Cowboys and the Giants, with the Cowboys winning it 20-15. We had Dak Prescott with 22 completions out of 27 attempts, 221 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We had Rico Dowdle with 11 carries, 46 yards. Ezekiel Elliott had 5 carries for 19 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 3 carries for 8 yards. Hunter Luepke had 2 carries for 8 yards. And Dak Prescott carried it 2 times but lost a yard because of it. CeeDee Lamb had 7 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown. Jake Ferguson, 7 receptions, 49 yards. We had Jalen Tolbert with 3 receptions for 24 yards. Brandon Cooks with 1 reception for 16 yards. Rico Dowdle with 1 reception, 15 yards, and a touchdown. Hunter Luepke with 2 receptions, 14 yards. And Ezekiel Elliott with 1 reception for 5 yards. We also had the Giants with Daniel Jones completing 29 of his passes out of 40 attempts for 281 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but did have an interception. Devin Singletary had 14 carries, 24 yards. We also had Daniel Jones carry the ball 4 times for 3 yards. Tyrone Tracy Jr. carried the ball 4 times for 2 yards. Eric Gray had 1 carry for 1 yard, and Malik Neighbors tried to carry it once but lost 4 yards because of it. Malik Neighbors also had 12 receptions for 115 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson had 11 receptions for 71 yards. Darius Slayton had 3 receptions for 56 yards. Tyrone Tracy Jr. had 1 reception for 19 yards. Devin Singletary had 1 reception for 14 yards. And Theo Johnson had 1 reception for 6 yards. Then we had the Panthers and the Bengals, with the Bengals getting the win here 34-24. Joe Burrow completed 22 passes out of 31 attempts, 232 yards, a touchdown, and a interception. Chase Brown had 15 carries, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Zach Moss had 15 carries for 51 yards, and Joe Burrow carried the ball 1 time for 10 yards. For the receiving side of things, we had Ja'Marr Chase, 3 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. T. Higgins with 6 receptions for 60 yards. Andre Losavis with 1 reception, 29 yards. Eric All Jr., 4 receptions for 28 yards. Zach Moss, 4 receptions, 27 yards, and a touchdown. Chase Brown, 2 receptions, 12 yards. Drew Sample caught the ball once but didn't get anything out of it. And Mike Gesicki caught the ball once but got -9 yards because of it. Then we had Andy Dalton completing 25 out of 40 of his passes for 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And for some reason, Johnny Hekker also attempted a throw, but he didn't get it. Stupid. Stupid. Chuba Hubbard had 18 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. Miles Sanders had 6 carries for 32 yards. Xavier Leggett had 2 carries for 10 yards. If I said 2 carries for Miles Sanders, I'm sorry, I meant to say 6. Andy Dalton, 3 carries, 9 yards. Then we had Deontay Johnson with 7 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Xavier Leggett had 6 receiving 6 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. That old 666 there got me laughing for a second and it fucking messed me up. Jonathan Mingo, 3 receptions, 24 yards. Chuba Hubbard had 4 receptions, 17 yards. Jatavion Sanders with 2 receptions for 16 yards. Miles Sanders with 3 receptions, 14 yards. And pretty decent game from the Bengals, I can say. Then we had the Saints and the Falcons with the what the fuck? Oh boy, today's gonna be a long day for me. And the Falcons, 26-24, they won. And man, wait a minute, did I just see that? Wow, none of the quarterbacks got a touchdown here, but we're gonna go with Derek Carr. 28 completions out of 36 attempts, 239 yards, and a interception. Alvin Kamara had 19 carries, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Taysom Hill had 6 carries for 24 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rashid Shaheed had 2 carries for 14 yards. We also had Jamal Williams with 3 carries for 11 yards, and Derek Carr, 3 carries for 5 yards. Chris Olave had 8 receptions, 87 yards. Rashid Shaheed had 8 receptions for 83 yards. Alvin Kamara had 7 receptions for 42 yards. We also had Javon Johnson with 2 receptions for 13 yards. Jamal Williams with 2 receptions, 8 yards. And last but not least, we had Mason Tipton with 1 reception for 6 yards. And for the Falcons side of things, we had Kirk Cousins completing 21 of his passes out of 35 attempts, 238 yards, and a interception. Tyler Algier had 8 carries, 60 yards. Bijan Robinson had 7 carries for 28 yards. Drake London, 6 receptions, 64 yards. Darnell Mooney, 3 receptions for 56 yards. Ray McLeod, 6 receptions for 52 yards. Bijan Robinson, 4 receptions for 46 yards. Tyler Algier, 2 receptions for 20 yards. And really, Younghoe Koo had a pretty good game. He had 4 completed field goals out of 4 attempts. So that's 12 points there. Then got 2 extra points. He had 14. And then there probably was, I don't know how there was a score. I think it was pick sixes. And then also Alvin Kamara did run that, and Taysom Hill ran it in twice. But for the Falcons, kind of looked like they just kicked a lot of field goals, probably got a safety, and I don't know. Oh, I see now. It was a fumble return from Kadarrell Hodge, and also Troy Anderson had a 47-yard interception return for a pick 6. So, all right, pretty good friggin' defensive game from the Falcons. I can't lie. That was a pretty good game. Then we had the Jaguars and the Texans, with the Texans winning this one 24-20. We had Trevor Lawrence completing 18 passes out of 33 attempts, 169 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tank Bigsby had 7 carries for 90 yards. Travis Etienne Jr. had 11 carries for 50 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. had 1 carry for 13 yards. Trevor Lawrence had 3 carries for 5 yards. And D'Ernest Johnson had 2 carries but didn't get any yards out of it. Brian Thomas Jr. also had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. Christian Kirk had 7 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. We had Brenton Strange with 3 receptions for 19 yards. Travis Etienne Jr. with 1 reception for 10 yards. And I'll just put these out there. Gabriel Davis, Gabe Davis had 1 reception, got -2 yards because of it, and Trevor Lawrence had 0 receptions but had -5 yards. Then we had the Texans. C.J. Stroud, 27 completions out of 40 attempts, 345 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cam Akers had 13 carries for 53 yards. J.J. Taylor had 6 carries for 18 yards. C.J. Stroud had 3 carries for 17 yards. Dare Ungambale had two carries for 7 yards. Stephon Diggs had a carry for 6 yards and a touchdown. And Steven Sims Jr. had a carry but didn't gain anything out of it. Nico Collins had 12 receptions for 151 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs had 5 receptions for 69 yards. Nice. Dare Ungumbale, I said that wrong. Dare Ungumbale had 4 receptions, 47 yards, and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz had 3 receptions for 34 yards. Cade Stover had 1 reception for 27 yards. Robert Woods had 1 reception for 10 yards. Let me just make sure I said that correctly. Yep. Then we had John Mechie with 1 reception and 7 yards. Then we had the Broncos and the Jets, with the Broncos winning 10-9. And Bo Nix completing 12 passes out of 25 attempts, 60 yards, and a touchdown. I ain't ever heard of a quarterback winning a game, playing the full game, and only getting 60 yards. I ain't ever heard of that shit, but that is funny. We had Javonte Williams, 16 carries, 77 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin with 9 carries, 46 yards. Bo Nix with 5 carries for 3 yards. And Tyler Bidet, not calling him that. Tyler Beatty with 1 carry but didn't get anything out of it. I heard the bidet thing from friggin' Brandon Perna. Oh boy. We had Cortland Sutton, 3 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown. Javonte Williams had 2 receptions for 3 yards. We had Michael Burton, 1 reception for 3 yards. Nate Adkins and Jaleel McLaughlin had a reception but didn't gain anything out of it. And we also had Troy Franklin receiving it twice from the air and getting -2 yards out of it. And Tyler Beatty had 2 receptions but got -4 yards because of it. Then we had Aaron Rodgers, 24 complete out of 42 attempted for 225 yards. That's a quarterback game right there. Then we have Braylon Allen, 8 carries, 34 yards. Aaron Rodgers, 5 carries for 26. And Breece Hall with 10 carries for 4 yards. That's horrible. Mike Williams, 4 receptions, 67 yards. Allen Lazard, 58 yards off of 5 receptions. I saw the 8 and just immediately said 8. Garrett Wilson had 5 receptions for 41 yards. Tyler Conklin had 4 receptions for 17 yards. Breece Hall had 2 receptions for 14 yards. Braylon Allen had 1 reception for 12 yards. We had Jeremy Ruckert with 2 receptions for 10 yards. And last but not least, we had Xavier Gibson with 1 reception for 6 yards. Then we had the Packers and the Vikings, with the Vikings winning at 31-29. And my God, just crazy game here. We had Sam Darnold completing 20 passes out of 28 attempts, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 8 interception. Aaron Jones got 22 carries, 93 yards. He did not do the Lambeau leap. Sam Darnold, he had 7 carries for 15 yards. Jordan Addison had 1 carry, 7 yards, and a touchdown. Ty Chandler had 3 carries for 5 yards. And Jalen Naylor had 1 carry but didn't get anything out of it. Justin Jefferson, 6 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Jordan Addison, 3 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones, 4 receptions for 46 yards. Jalen Naylor, 1 reception for 31 yards. Johnny Munt with 2 receptions, 15 yards. Josh Oliver with 2 receptions for 10 yards and a touchdown. Ty Chandler had 1 reception for 8 yards, as well as Trent Sherfield Sr. And yeah, that's really about it. Byron Murphy Jr. got a interception off of I almost just said Aaron Rodgers, off of Jordan Love, and also Shaquille Griffin also did. And Camu Greer Hill was the last guy that got him for a interception. Then we had Jordan Love, 32 completed passes out of 54 attempts, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. I just mentioned those 3 interceptions. We had Josh Jacobs, 9 carries for 51 yards. We had Emmanuel Wilson, 8 carries for 27 yards. Jordan Love had 1 carry for 6 yards. And Jaden Reed had 1 carry for 2 yards. Jaden Reed, another huge game for him. 7 receptions, 139 yards, and a touchdown. Then we also had Dontavian Wicks with 5 receptions, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We had Tucker Kraft with 6 receptions, 53 yards, and a touchdown. Romeo Doubs had 4 receptions for 39 yards. We had Bo Melton with 1 reception for 28 yards. Josh Jacobs had 4 receptions for 27 yards. Luke Musgrave had 3 receptions for 13 yards. And Malik Heath had 2 receptions for, I believe it said 8, for 12 yards actually. And Xavier McKinney, again, another interception, which means 4 interceptions in 4 weeks. He's keeping his streak alive. Then we had the Colts and the Steelers, with the Colts winning 27-24. And we had Justin Fields completing 22 passes out of 34 attempts, 312 yards, and a touchdown. Justin Fields also had 10 carries for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cordero Patterson had 6 carries for 43 yards. Najee Harris had 13 carries for 19 yards. And Aaron Shamplin had 1 carry for 5 yards. George Pickens, 7 receptions, 113 yards. Pat Freiermuth had 5 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Najee Harris had 3 receptions for 54 yards. Darnell Washington had 2 receptions for 31 yards. Van Jefferson had 2 receptions for 21 yards. Cordell Patterson had 2 receptions for 19 yards. And finally, Calvin Austin had 1 reception for 17 yards. Then we had the Colts. Joe Flacco, my boy, Joe Flacco, coming in. 16 completed passes out of 26 attempts, 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. Anthony Richardson had 3 completions out of 4 attempts for 71 yards. All right. Jonathan Taylor had 21 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Anthony Richardson had 3 carries for 24 yards. Adonai Mitchell had 1 carry for 10 yards. We had Trey Sermon with 5 carries for 8 yards. And Joe Flacco carrying the ball 2 times for 3 yards. Michael Pittman Jr. had 6 receptions, 113 yards. We had Josh Downs with 8 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor had 3 receptions for 20 yards. Andrew Ogletree had 1 reception, 15 yards, and a touchdown. I thought that was Alec Ogletree, not Andrew. Alec Pierce had 1 reception for 9 yards. Then we had the Rams and the Bears, with the Bears win at 24-18. We had Matthew Stafford completing 20 passes out of 29 attempts for 224 yards and a interception. Kyren Williams had 19 carries, 94 yards, and a touchdown. We had Ronnie Rivers with 6 carries for 26 yards, and Matthew Stafford carried the ball once but got -1 yard out of it. Tutu Atwell had 4 receptions, 82 yards. We had Jordan Whittington with 6 receptions, 62 yards. We had Demarcus Robinson with 2 receptions for 37 yards. We had Colby Parkinson with 4 receptions for 33 yards. And Kyren Williams had 4 receptions for 10 yards. And for the Bears side of things, we had Caleb Williams completing 17 passes out of 23 attempts, 157 yards, and a touchdown. DeAndre Swift had 16 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown. We had Roschon Johnson with 7 carries, 26 yards, and a touchdown. Caleb Williams carried the ball 5 times for 12 yards. We also had DeAndre Swift with 7 receptions, 72 yards. Cole Kmet had 3 receptions for 34 yards. DJ Moore had 3 receptions, 22 yards, and a touchdown. We had Keenan Allen, 3 receptions for 19 yards, and Rome Odunze with 1 reception for 10 yards. Then we had the Eagles and the Buccaneers, with the Buccaneers winning this one 33-16. We had Jalen Hurts completing 18 passes out of 30 attempts, 158 yards, and a touchdown. Saquon Barkley had 10 carries for 84 yards. Jalen Hurts had 8 carries, 20 yards, and a touchdown. And we had Kenneth Gainwell with 2 carries for 9 yards. We had Dallas Goedert with 7 receptions, 62 yards. Saquon Barkley had 2 receptions for 32 yards. We had Grant Calcaterra with 1 reception, 26 yards. Paris Campbell with 4 receptions, 17 yards, and a touchdown. Jahan Dotson with 2 receptions, 11 yards. John Ross with 1 reception, 6 yards. And Jack Stoll with 1 reception for 4 yards. Then for the Buccaneers side of things, we had Baker Mayfield, 30 completed passes out of 47 attempts, 347 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving had 10 carries, 49 yards, and a touchdown, as well as Rachaad White, who also had 10 carries and 49 yards. Baker Mayfield had 4 carries, 10 yards, and a touchdown. And Sean Tucker had 1 carry for 3 yards. We had Mike Evans, 8 receptions, 94 yards, and a touchdown. Chris Godwin had 6 receptions off of 69 yards. Nice. We had Cade Otton with 6 receptions, 52 yards. We had Sterling Shepard with 3 receptions for 51 yards. We had Rachaad White with 2 receptions, 35 yards. We had Trey Palmer with 3 receptions, 26 yards, and a touchdown. We had Sean Tucker with 1 reception for 14 yards, and Bucky Irving with 1 reception for 6 yards. Then we had the San Francisco 49ers versus my New England Patriots, with the 49ers winning at 30-13, which I knew was going to happen anyway. Jacoby Brissett, 19 completions out of 32 attempts, 168 yards, touchdown, interception. Ramondre Stevenson, 13 carries for 43 yards. JaMycal Hasty had 3 carries, 15 yards. Antonio Gibson had 6 carries for 12 yards. And Jacoby Brissett had 2 carries for 3 yards. Antonio Gibson had 3 receptions for 67 yards. Jalen Polk had 3 receptions for 30 yards. Ramondre Stevenson had 4 receptions for 19 yards. Demario Douglas had 3 receptions for 13 yards. Austin Hooper had 2 receptions, 13 yards, and a touchdown. We had Hunter Henry, 2 receptions for 12 yards. Kayshon Boutte with 1 reception for 11 yards. And KJ Osborne with 1 reception for 3 yards. We had Brock Purdy complete 15 passes out of 27 attempts, 288 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Jordan Mason had 24 carries, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel Jr. had 2 carries for 14 yards. Brock Purdy had 5 carries for 11 yards. And Isaac Guerendo had 1 carry but didn't get any yards out of it. Then we had Jauan Jennings, who had 3 receptions for 88 yards. Deebo Samuel had 3 receptions for 58 yards. Brandon Ayuk had 2 receptions for 48 yards. George Kittle had 4 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Jordan Mason had 2 receptions for 37 yards. And Kyle Juszczyk had 1 reception for 12 yards. Then we had the Commanders and the Cardinals, with the Commanders winning it 42-14. At least my Patriots didn't get beat that bad. Jesus Christ, Cardinals. It was pretty close, but man. And I know one person who's going to be loving that is Lil Marco, one of my subscribers, and also one of Tom Grossi's most famous characters, Wildflower Turquoise. But anyway, we had Jaden Daniels. This guy is crazy good, I feel. 26 completions, 30 attempts, 233 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. We had Brian Robinson with 21 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown. We had Jeremy McNichols with 8 carries, 68 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels had 8 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown as well. Then we had Omalide Zacchaeus with 6 receptions, 85 yards. We had Scary Terry with 7 receptions, 52 yards, and a touchdown. We had Noah Brown with 3 receptions, 26 yards. Zach Ertz had 3 receptions for 22 yards. Luke McCaffrey had 1 reception for 17 yards. Brian Robinson had 3 receptions for 12 yards. We had John Bates with 1 reception for 9 yards. Jeremy McNichols had 1 reception for 6 yards. And Dyami Brown had 1 reception for 4 yards. And for the Cardinals side of things, we had Kyler Murray completing 16 passes out of 22 for 142 yards and a touchdown. We had James Conner carrying the ball 18 times for 104 yards and a touchdown. we had Trey Benson carrying the ball 9 times for 50 yards. We had Amari Demercado with 4 receptions, 24 yards. Kyler Murray had 1 carry for 3 yards. If I said 4 receptions for Demercado, I'm sorry, I meant carries. We had Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. We had Greg Dortch with 4 receptions, 38 yards. We had Michael Wilson with 3 receptions, 38 yards. I think that was Elijah Higgins with 2 receptions, 12 yards. We had James Conner with 1 reception, 9 yards. And Demercado caught the ball once but didn't get any yards out of it. And to the person that said that the Cardinals were gonna destroy the Commanders on one of my videos a few days ago, you were very, very wrong about that one. Then we had the Chiefs and the Chargers, with the Chiefs win at 17-10. We had Patrick Mahomes, 19 completions out of 29 attempts, 245 yards, a touchdown, and 8 interception. Kareem Hunt had 14 carries for 69 yards. Nice. We had Sam J. Perine with 5 carries for 14 yards and a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes had 5 carries for 12 yards. And Carson Steele had 2 carries for 6 yards. Travis Kelce looking a little bit more like himself, as he had 7 receptions for 89 yards. Xavier Worthy had 3 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. We had Noah Gray. Yeah. We had Noah Gray with 4 receptions for 40 yards. We had Justin Watson with 2 receptions, 27 yards. Kareem Hunt had 2 receptions for 16 yards. Carson Steele caught the ball once but didn't get anything out of it. And also, that injury to oh god, now I can't remember what his name was. Give me a second here. I need to now find this. Where are you? Where are you? Yeah, Rashi Rice. I that was a horrible injury there. And that was and he got hit by Patrick too, so that ugh. I do not like that injury. But we also had the Chargers. We had Justin Herbert completing 16 passes out of 27 attempts, 179 yards, and a touchdown. We had J.K. Dobbins with 14 carries for 32 yards. Gus Edwards had 6 carries for 19 yards. Quentin Johnston had 1 carry for 4 yards. And Justin Herbert carried the ball 3 times but didn't get anything out of it. Ladd McConkey with 5 receptions, 67 yards, and a touchdown. We had Joshua Palmer with 3 receptions for 36 yards. J.K. Dobbins with 3 receptions, 30 yards. Will Dissly with 2 receptions for 24 yards. We had Quentin Johnston with 1 reception for 9 yards. We had Scott Matlock with 1 reception, 7 yards. And Hayden Hurst with 1 reception for 6 yards. Then we had the Browns and the Raiders, with the Raiders winning this one 20-16. We had Deshaun Watson completing the pass 24 times out of 32 attempts, 176 yards, a touchdown, and 8 interception. We had Jerome Ford with 10 carries, 58 yards. Deshaun Watson had 8 carries for 32 yards. And Donta Foreman had 4 carries for 2 yards. We had Jerry Jeudy, 6 receptions, 72 yards. Amari Cooper had 4 receptions for 35 yards. Also heard that he had a little bit of money, like renegotiate or something like that, and it made it easier for him to become tradable. So I'm looking out for that one. Jerome Ford had 7 receptions for 27 yards. We had Blake Whiteheart with 3 receptions, 13 yards, and a touchdown. We had Elijah Moore with 1 reception, 11 yards. Jordan Atkins had 1 reception for 10 yards. We had Donta Foreman with 1 reception, 5 yards. And James Porch. Porch. Porch, I think. Uh, 1 reception for 3 yards. Excuse me there, boss. Um, but we had the Raiders, and we had Gardner Minshew with 14 carries, 24 attempts. 14 completions, 24 attempts, 130 yards. We had Alexander Madison, 5 carries for 60 yards. We had Zamir White with 17 carries for 50 yards. DJ Turner had 1 carry, 18 yards, and a touchdown. Brock Bowers carried the ball once for 12 yards. We had Tyreek McAllister with 2 carries for 11 yards. We had Trey Tucker with 1 carry for 3 yards. And Gardner Minshew carried the ball twice but got -2 yards because of it. We also had Jacoby Myers, 5 receptions, 49 yards. Trey Tucker had 5 receptions for 41 yards. We had Harrison Bryant with 2 receptions for 21 yards. And Brock Bowers had 2 receptions for 19 yards. Then we had the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, with the Ravens win at 35-10. We had Josh Allen complete 16 passes out of 29 attempts for 180 yards. We also had Mike Trubisky complete 1 pass out of 2 attempts for 2 yards. We had James Cook carry the ball 9 times for 39 yards. We had Josh Allen carry the ball 5 times for 21 yards. We had Ray Davis carry the ball 7 times for 11 yards. Curtis Samuel carried the ball once for 7 yards. And Ty Johnson had 1 carry, 3 yards, and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir had 4 receptions for 62 yards. Keon Coleman had 3 receptions, 51 yards. Dalton Kincaid had 5 receptions for 47 yards. My computer just told me my storage is almost full. I don't care right now. But yeah, Dalton Kincaid, 5 receptions, 47 yards. James Cook had 1 reception for 9 yards. Curtis Samuel had 2 receptions, 8 yards. Mac Hollins had 1 reception for 5 yards, and Dawson Knox had a reception but did not get the ball anywhere. Then we had Lamar Jackson complete 13 passes out of 18 attempts, 156 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We also had Josh Johnson throw the ball once and completed it for 1 yard. We had Derrick Henry carry the ball 24 times for 199 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson carried the ball 6 times for 54 yards and a touchdown. And Justice Hill carried the ball 4 times for 18 yards. Justice Hill also had 6 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Likely had 1 reception for 26 yards. Rashad Bateman had 1 reception for 23 yards. Derrick Henry had 3 receptions, 10 yards, and a touchdown. Nelson Agholor had 2 receptions for 10 yards. Zay Flowers had 1 reception for 10 yards. All right, and then we have the Titans and the Dolphins, with the Titans win at 31-12. We have Mason Rudolph with 9 completions out of 17 attempts for 85 yards. Will Levis doing Will Levis things, as he had 3 completions out of 4 attempts, 25 yards, and a interception. Tony Pollard had 22 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Tajay Spears had 15 carries, 39 yards, and a touchdown. Calvin Ridley had 1 carry for 10 yards, and Will Levis carried the ball twice for 5 yards. Tyler Boyd had 2 receptions for 31 yards, as well as DeAndre Hopkins. Tony Pollard had 2 receptions for 20 yards. We had Treylon Burks with 1 reception, 13 yards. Three guys with 1 reception, 5 yards, as we have Josh Weil, Chig Okonkwo, and Calvin Ridley all getting that. And Tajay Spears had 2 receptions but didn't get anything out of it. And then for the Dolphins side of things, we had Tyler Huntley, 14 completions out of 22 attempts for 96 yards. Tyler Huntley also had 8 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown. We had Jalen Wright with 9 carries, 32 yards. Tyreek Hill with 3 carries for 19 yards. Sorry about that. And Devin Achane with 10 carries and 15 yards. Jesus. Jalen Waddle had 4 receptions, 36 yards. Tyreek Hill had 4 receptions for 23 yards. Tanner Connor had 2 receptions, 15 yards. Devin Achane had 3 receptions for 14 yards. And Malik Washington had 1 reception for 8 yards. And for the final game, we had the Seahawks and the Lions, with the Lions winning this one 42-29. We had Geno Smith complete 38 out of 56 passes for 395 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Kenneth Walker had 12 carries, 80 yards, and 3 touchdowns. We had Geno Smith carry the ball 5 times for 38 yards, and Zach Charbonnet had 2 carries for 15 yards. DK Metcalf, 7 receptions, 104 yards. Tyler Lockett, 5 receptions, 61 yards. Jackson Smith had 8 receptions, 51 yards. Zach Charbonnet had 5 receptions, 39 yards. Kenneth Walker had 4 receptions for 36 yards. Jake Bobo had 3 receptions for 30 yards. AJ Barner had 2 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. We had Noah Fant with 2 receptions for 26 yards. Laviska Shenault with 1 reception, 18 yards. And Pharaoh Brown with 1 reception for 3 yards. And for the final team to talk about, and this is a crazy fucking stat right here, Jared Goff, 18 completions out of 18 attempts, 292 yards, and 2 touchdowns. A perfect passer rating. Straight perfect. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 1 completion out of 1 attempt for 7 yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 carries, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery, 12 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown. Jared Goff, 2 carries, -2 yards. We had Jameson Williams, 2 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Sam Laporta, 4 receptions, 53 yards. Tim Patrick, 2 receptions, 52 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. David Montgomery, 1 reception for 40 yards. We had Brock Wright with 2 receptions for 13 yards. Khalif Raymond with 1 reception for 9 yards. And the kicker, Jared Goff, with 1 reception, 7 yards, and a touchdown. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this one was a little bit longer than the usual ones, but I've also been sick the last few days and everything, so given my time to talk a little more, at least going a little slower, but talking a little bit more. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. And as always, like, subscribe, comment, do really whatever you want to do. you can also subscribe to my gaming channel, which I'm posting Madden content right now, and there's going to be some Call of Duty videos coming out pretty soon on there too. So, like I said, hope you guys like, subscribe, comment, do really whatever you want to do. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video. See you around.